Hey everybody, welcome to the program. You're watching The Sit Down. I'm DJ Sixsmith. Tom House is here with us, former major leaguer, pitching expert, former pitching coach. You've done a little bit of everything, Tom. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's good being on with you. So you ask, and I'll do the best I can to answer. Does that sound good?
Let's do this thing. So you are involved with a new venture called Mustard, and it's supposed to be specifically targeted to the youth when it comes to athletics and mechanics and the emotional and the social with all these different athletes. How'd you get involved?
Well, over the years of, this is 50 years now that I've either been a player, a coach, or a researcher. And in the mid 80s, as I was winding my career down as a pitcher and getting more and more into coaching, we started getting involved with three-dimensional motion analysis. And it was cumbersome and it was expensive. But we managed to get around 900 major league pitchers in the computer at 1,000 frames a second, and about 1,200 hitters, big league hitters, about 3,000 golfers. In other words, anybody that would come into the lab to get a motion analysis, we got them. Didn't know what we were looking at, wasn't quite sure where the technology would go. But as push came to shove, we came up with a statistically validated model on movement efficiency for throwers and strikers, specifically pitchers. So that was the beginning of technology and research for throwing mechanics for a pitcher. And then about halfway into, about 10, 12 years ago, I was up at USC doing research, and we added in the technology of force plate ground force production with wireless EMG to see how muscles reacted to the movements that we've been researching. And then because of necessity, we started to figure out that recovery for elite athletes was just as important as preparation. So we started quantifying why some people recovered quicker than others. And that's where we got into nutrition, sleep, and all the blood chemistry issues. Then the final piece of the puzzle, and we were talking about Yogi Berra earlier off camera. He said 90% of baseball is 50% mental. Well, I actually think it's more important than that. In fact, most of the athletes that fail or go home, it's a mental emotional thing. So as luck would have it, we ran into good technology with that also with one of the partners with what we're doing with Mustard, Jason Goldsmith, and his technology, which is focus band. So long story, a little longer. I apologize for being wordy. We can now statistically validate, measure, and quantify biomechanical efficiency, functional strength, recovery, and mental emotional management. And if you were just to show up and say you want to go through one of our weekends as an elite athlete, it would cost you about 10 grand, and everything would be in your hand about 3 days later. Oh. But what we've been able to do, the extremely smart, the brilliant people that are hanging out with us now as programmers are able to take all the research, all the modeling that we have accumulated over the last 40 plus years and reduced it down to where you can actually, if you have a cell phone or an iPad, that's all you need, and you get exactly the same thing that our elite guys get. And the purpose of that, and then I'll shut up for a couple seconds, I hope, is right now in the world of youth sports, basically 80% of the boys and girls that are playing youth sports stop playing at age 14. Either it's not fun, they get hurt, they're not performing, but they're all shutting it down. Well, if we could figure out a way to extend the playing time, no matter what the sport is. They may never play in college, they may never play pro ball, but we found the athlete that will play through high school, male or female, becomes a lifetime fan of a sport, and it actually helps them to personalize this artificial intelligent world. If you've ever played sports, you know you have to deal with failure, you have to learn about empathy, you have to learn how to collaborate, you have to have an affiliation, all the things that artificial intelligence programs out of you, sports puts back in. So my goal before my time is up is to get it out there to these kids in large numbers so that we can actually affect their lives with the power of play in a positive way. That's the speech.
You hit on a lot of really important things there. First of all, the fact that you're an early adopter into technology and analytics in the 80s is incredible. And we've seen this in professional sports for several decades, but youth sports has really become a major business. And having this technology could really change the game. So how do you think this could potentially revolutionize youth sports and having this information and getting smarter with the technology?
Okay, that is a really good question. We know for a fact that moms and dads of pre-adolescent athletes hugely affect where their kids are going to play. And what we're able to do with a cell phone is give a mom of an 11-year-old little leaguer the same thing I would give that 11-year-old little leaguer, with the identification of point in time capacity, age specific, and if there's an issue, we also give them the fixes. We give them the drills and all the protocols to fix a mechanical flaw, to condition them properly for their age, to tell them that sodas are no good, that's causing you recovery issues. And the fears of failure you have and the stress and getting all nervous in a game is normal. And here's how you deal with it. So we're enabling parents to do the same thing that the elite coaches and the elite athletes are doing, but on a broader scale. I am really thrilled about where this is going. And our initial beta launch is coming up this Friday. But right now, all things point to this is really going to have a huge impact on the youth in the world.
You're somebody that has studied the psychology of sports for several decades. And when it comes to youth sports, there can be a lot of pressure on kids. There's social media, there's their parents, there's trying to get to college. When you think about everything going on right now for kids, what's most important to focus on mentally, especially with everything going on in the world too?
The hardest thing, we live in an outcome world, all of us do now. You are judged by outcome. But no matter what direction you take with an occupation in the future, outcomes are necessary, but they're really uncontrollable. The only thing you can control is process. And sports at any level are games of failure coached by negative people in a misinformation environment. And what we try to help parents of youth athletes, and particularly youth athletes themselves, is fail fast forward. You will learn more from your failures than you will from your successes. And if you could get that in a family's mind, that don't judge by outcome, judge by process. And every athlete is different in the way they interpret the information and instruction they get. But there are windows of learnability and windows of trainability. And what we've been able to do with this app is to match it up so it's personally adaptive for that child and his environment. In other words, if you went on and you went through the typing in of all the information and the personal histories and whatever, and sent us some videos, we would be able to tell you exactly what your point in time capacity is based on your chronological age and your biological age, identify the issues, and come up with a fix that if you do this, this, and this, in 4 to 6 weeks, you'll be better at the task. And don't feel bad about screwing up. Everybody messes up. It's learning from it and moving on. And again, our words are fail fast forward.
Yeah, failure is a part of life. Failure is certainly a part of sports. And it's really interesting because you're hitting on the fact that parents are trying to get smarter when it comes to their kids and elite athletes. And, one of the books I have behind me here is Range by David Epstein. And you have that conversation of Tiger Woods versus Roger Federer. Do you go all in on one sport or do you play a bunch of different sports? Where do you rank on that one?
Well, Range and what was his first book? The genetic
Sports Gene, yeah.
The Sports Gene, right. He's basically a smart guy that's putting in a book everything we've been doing intuitively. And it's reinforcement for being a generalist. You can be both. You can be both, and you can be, one or the other. But the objective here is to identify the way you learn, identify what window of learnability and trainability you're in, finding a passion about something, and be motivated and committed to going it until you're not passionate about it anymore. And what I like about range, it gives you permission to change your mind 7 times. My dad's 101 years old.
Wow.
He came out of World War II, got a job, and worked with the same company till he retired, 50 years. Kids today will change, they don't realize it, but they're going to change their occupation 6, 7 times in 50 years. How old, you mind if I ask how old you are?
I just turned 27.
27, are you married?
I'm married, yeah.
Do you have children yet?
Not yet, no.
It will tear you up when you're watching your child playing or competing or whatever, and they fall down and hurt themselves, or they fail at what they're trying. You would do anything to help them not have that feeling that's going on inside you. But what you don't realize, like when your child learns how to walk, your kid's going to fail about 20 to 30 times before he learns how to play, before he can take 3 steps. And what do we do in that case? We're all going, oh, come on, Jimmy, get up, do it again, do it again. Well, most parents or coaches in today's world, when somebody screws up, they go, what's wrong with you? You are the worst. It would be the equivalent of every time your baby fell down trying to walk, you say, you suck at walking. You're never going to walk. Your kid would still be crawling when they're 30 years old. So there's a fit somewhere in between there where parents that care too much, that they try to keep their kid from ever experiencing difficulties or failure, and letting them without getting hurt. It's a strange world we're living in, and obviously you have to worry about safety. But my mom used to say, if it doesn't kill you, it's a good experience. So that was a whole lot of stuff in about one long sentence. I hope it made sense.
It totally does, and I'm right there with you in terms of just letting people figure it out as they go, being a generalist, trying a bunch of different things. I mean, your career speaks to that. You were a Major League Baseball player. You were a pitching coach. You got your doctorate. You've done all these different things. You've had to adjust and adapt all throughout the years.
You have done your homework. I'm going to give you a little gallery clap whether you want it or not. Yeah, I never thought I wanted to in the worst way. I wanted to play baseball in the big leagues, but I never thought I could make a living at it. So I kept going to school to please my mom. We had a no A, no play policy at our house, so we understood the value of education. So I got to the big leagues, and I actually am living a dream, but I'd already committed to a track on getting a PhD, so I kept going to school. And then the more I went to school, the more I realized how much I didn't know, and I went from business degrees to physiology degrees, and finally ended up with a PhD in performance psychology. So I'd like to say it was well planned and well thought out. It was very organic and basically stumbled into things without knowing what I was doing.
Some of the best things in life are unplanned. I'm a big believer in that. And
yeah.
I want to hit some stories with you here because you've been involved in so many different amazing moments over the year. When you think about Hank Aaron breaking the home run record, what do you remember about that night?
Okay, now, that was the good news is that was the highlight of my Major League pitching career. You know what the bad news is?
What's that?
That was the highlight of my Major League pitching career. So basically what we did, we had territories locked out behind the fence where the bullpen was. And the people with the most seniority were toward the foul line where Henry hit most of these home runs. And myself and a guy named Buzz Capra were in left center field. So what I'd known after throwing batting practice to Henry in spring training over the course of 7 years, that off of a left-handed pitcher that pitched him away, hard or soft, he had a tendency to hit the ball to left center. So I didn't feel bad about being stuck in left center. And I'll guarantee the baseball guys were with me that day because Downing threw him a fastball away and he hit it to left center. If I would have stood still, it would have bounced off my forehead.
Wow.
So I caught the ball, ran it as fast as my little legs would carry me into home plate, broke through the crowd, at home plate, gave it to him right in front of his mom, who both of them were in tears. He took the ball from me and said, "Thanks, kid." I didn't really even think he knew who I was. But in that moment right there, that whole thing is captured, and I'm actually in the Hall of Fame.
Wow.
So that's how that story went. And again, Henry, of all the athletes I ever played with, all the superstars, he was the most quietly competent superstar I've ever seen in my life, period.
Wow, that's an incredible story. And yeah, Henry Aaron is an all-time great. So too is Nolan Ryan, who you obviously know well and spent time with. What do you remember about your first interactions with him, and how did you guys click once you got together?
Okay, it turned out really good. We had known each other because I was an instructor in the Houston Astro organization, traveling pitching coach when he was in the big leagues with the Astros. So he came to the Rangers for 1 year because he was very familiar with Bobby Valentine, having played with Bobby with the Angels. And he was aware that we were doing new things with motion analysis and had some science. So he showed up with an open mind, just trying to make it through 1 year. So he would have been a Hall of Famer no matter what. But what he did was embrace the new technology, and he tried things. And sidebar real quick, one of the things I've seen about these superstars, they're willing to try stuff if it makes sense to them. And they're great BS detectors. But when he saw some of the things we were recommending, he tried it, throwing the football, not running on hard ground, but running in the pool, and altering his weight training a little bit, paying attention to recovery and nutrition. And literally 1 year turned into 7 years. So the relationship was perfect. And my kids were the same age as his. So we lived real close to each other when we were with the Rangers and went back and forth to the ballpark. I got a quick story that might make you laugh.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So his second or third outing as a Texas Ranger, Bobby Valentine is our skipper, and obviously I'm the pitching coach. And we're real tentative about how to handle Nolan when he's going bad. So Nolan was struggling a little bit, and Bobby looks me in the face and says, I tell you what, why don't you go out and see how he's doing? And I said, Bobby, are you sure you want me to do it? Don't you want to be first? He said, no, you go do it. So I jog out to the mound. I walk up, and I face to face, and I said, Nolan, how you doing, buddy? He said, Tom, I'm doing terrible, but it's way better than what you got warming up in that bullpen. Get the hell off my mound. So I said, okay, I got you. So I haul butt back, sit down next to Bobby, and Bobby said, what did he say? I said, Bobby, you don't want to know. So Bobby went out to take him out 2 innings later. And when he got out there, he said, Nolan, that'll be it. And he reached out for the ball. And Nolan said, Bobby, no, it won't. One of us is leaving this mound, and it ain't going to be me. So Bobby said, okay. So Bobby runs back down and sits next to me. He said, Tom, we got to come up with a better plan to get this kid out of a game. So those are the we all learned together. I'd like to say I had it all figured out. I didn't, but we've had a whole lot of fun getting there.
It's hard to remember that Nolan Ryan was a pitcher early in his career that couldn't find the strike zone when he was with the New York Mets. And, speaking of the Mets, we lost Tom Seaver this week, and he was one of the all-time greats, in my opinion. What do you remember about watching Seaver pitch back in the day?
Well, I went to school with him.
Oh, wow.
Okay, at USC. So have you got a couple minutes for a story?
Feel free. Anything you got.
I spent a pretty sleepless night last night. Like, going to USC at that point in the 60s was a breeding ground for excellent pitchers, Tom Seaver being the best ever. And USC is a family. And Rod Dato, who was the coach of the century, 13 national champions, had this ability to bring disparate parts together and make them work and win. So Seaver was a year ahead of me, but again, he was part of the Trojan baseball family. And what Rod would do is he'd put two people on a mound that were completely opposite or whatever. So I'm throwing my little dab of doo-doo, 82, 83 with a curveball, and this man-child next to me is just going, wow, pow, pow. And I'm going, holy smokes. And I kind of know who it was. So Rod comes up and puts his hand on my shoulder and he said, Tommy House, what do you think of young Tom Seaver? And I said, Skipper, if you need me to do that, you got the wrong lefty. He said, no. I want him to be Tom Seaver. He'll be behind the bat. You be Tom House. You be before the bat. All I'm asking you guys to do is be the best you that you can be, and I'll figure out how to put the pieces together. So that's how it started. And obviously, Tom is a superstar, traveled in a little bit different sphere than I did, as just barely making a ball club for 9 years. But one thing was true with him. He had the baseball persona. Obviously, his career and legend belongs to big league baseball. But on the backside, he was a very private person, and being part of the SC family allowed a consistency of interaction and communication that very few people saw. He was really a bright person, committed to baseball, but also family was huge to him. And to be part of the SC family and be a part of the big league baseball arena was a blessing for me.
I mean, he was really an incredible man. He had a wine vineyard late in his life too. He just did so many different things, but he just kept to himself. Like, he wasn't this big icon after he was done playing, because he obviously didn't want that. And then he was also getting sick there at the end too.
Yeah. And yeah, I've got Parkinson's also. So I kind of semi-relate to what he was going through. And he was having some physical issues, and obviously the mental emotional stuff. So, you know, everybody was pulling for him, but every day was dignity to him. He went about his daily existence, surviving every day just the way he did when he was playing big league baseball. Everything he's got every day to the best of his ability. Cool stuff.
Really incredible stuff. I appreciate you sharing that. And just one of the many people that you've been able to get to know and get to touch. And that's just in baseball. Tom, how do you make the transition from baseball to football, other quarterbacks you work with?
Okay, now, you know, this is another thing that people think was well planned out. No clue.
Stumbled into that too.
So when I was with a pitching coach with the Padres, their head trainer, a guy named Dick Dent, threw footballs for what they call touchdown Tommies. Instead of having the pitcher run and you throw a baseball that he catches, they were actually throwing footballs to each other. We found out that you can't throw a football wrong and make it spiral. And then because it's heavier than a baseball, it was also a strength builder. And guys they recovered faster from stiffness and soreness throwing the football. So wherever I went from there on, I took the football with me. But when I joined the Rangers and we actually had motion analysis capacity, we found out that throwing a football and throwing a baseball were the same exact physical movement, except for timing and the length of the arm path. So we actually implemented it in part of our process, and we would capture any quarterback, anybody would throw a football, we got them in the computer. And then we got Berline, we got Montana, we got Marino, we got Marinovich. You're a little young to remember who he was.
Yeah, anyway, no, I know all these guys though.
Yeah, we had all those guys in the computer, and I did the same thing with quarterbacks that I do with pitchers. What are the common denominators of the elite? What are basically the things that are imperatives and the things that are inevitabilities, and just measure and monitor accordingly. And one thing led to another. Drew Brees got hurt when he was with the Chargers. His offensive coordinator, Cam Cameron, kind of lined up before, during, and after the surgery. And we fixed Drew. Drew came back from a surgery that nobody had ever come back from before. And then Drew started talking us up a little bit, and pretty soon we got Tom Brady showing up, and Alex Smith, and all the elite quarterbacks are starting to hang out with in the off season, just like our pitchers did in the off season. And again, not very well planned out, but right now at this point in time with 3D QB, which is the company that we started, we're probably dealing with 28 of the top 32 NFL quarterbacks and most of their backups, a whole lot of collegiate prospects. It's been an interesting trail for me. I can hardly wake up I'm in a hurry to wake up every morning just to see what new is happening. And again, the highlight of my day so far is your last name. I want to go on record for that.
I appreciate that. The crazy thing about Brees is that through the surgery and also the work with you, he got better and he's become an unbelievable quarterback.
All right. Now, it's not just me, but if people follow the process that we give them based on our screening, testing, and assessing, everybody gets better. We haven't had anybody go in the tank that actually committed to the profiles we provided for them. And the one thing I have seen is that these elite guys, the one common denominator that I can see with all the elite athletes, golf, tennis, whatever it might be, they try to get 1% better every day. When a kid comes to us, they can make a 20% improvement in a weekend. But the superstars, every day, just one thing. And their commitment to that excellence, getting better every day, I think is one of the reasons these guys are thrown into their 40s now, instead of being all done. In my generation, most athletes were done at age 35 or 36.
Tom Brady is one of those guys still thrown in his 40s. Tom, of all the athletes you've worked with, what stands out about Tom Brady to you?
Well, they all have different strengths and weaknesses. Tom has a unique ability. He's adjusted physically to everything. He was a catcher, and the athleticism was there. But he has the ability to recall plays that, from 6 or 7 years ago. And in practice, he actually plays in practice almost with the same intensity that he plays in games. But he pulls out and calls and does things with something that happened 3 or 4 years ago. Like when I've actually been involved with Tom and his receivers now for 8 years. And this new year, going down to Florida with Tampa has been a little different. But his ability to recruit past thinking with current necessities for performance is where I think he shows up the best. Physical tools obviously are there, and he's not afraid to try something new. And again, 1% better every day.
So why don't we wrap up here? You've been on this amazing odyssey through sport, through life. What do you want your legacy to be once it's all said and done?
I would be a happy person when my ticket is finally punched to know that myself and the bright people around me have been able to inform, instruct, and inspire to master, mentor, and make a difference with every athlete we touch, and especially the youth of the world. If I die with that in mind, then I know my time on this earth was well spent. So that's a little esoteric, but it's something I actually believe in. We're literally trying to make a difference wherever we go.
I think you've done that in a lot of different ways. That is Dr. Tom House. Tom, thank you very much. Best of luck with Mustard. Stay healthy, and we'll talk to you down the road, all right?
Thank you. I'll pal around with you anytime.